Hello and welcome to another episode of the Happy Head podcast. I said that really slowly this time so I can enunciate properly. As you know well by now, my name is Paul and I'm your host. Today I'm joined by the fabulous Amanda McKinlay, all the way from somewhere in Bonnie, Scotland. Good morning, Amanda. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am splendiferous, thank you. What's the weather doing up there? It's kind of slightly murky, but the sun's doing its best to shine.
No, it's Scotland and it's April, so it's very murky and very wet this morning.
Oh no, we've not had any rain for a while. We've got some dew next week, but it's been quite dry here for a while.
But I had two guys talking yesterday when I was on my way into the office, and yesterday we moved a bit more out of lockdown in Scotland, and there's these two gentlemen lamenting the fact that the beer gardens were now open and the weather had changed.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I think it was April the 12th, beer gardens were allowed to open here in England. And I just found it really bizarre. There were people queuing outside pubs in the middle of the night to get in. Now, I could understand if it was like some kind of amazing event with some celebrities turning up, but your ordinary bog standard, pub, people queuing outside to get in just seems a bit weird.
Yeah, well, just down the road from me in Glasgow, there was people queuing up from 4:30 in the morning, waiting to get into Primark yesterday.
I love Primani as much as anybody, but
me too.
Queuing up to get in there just because it's open is just bizarre. It's almost like, oh my God, I've run out of clothes. I'm going to have to go naked if I don't go to Primani and buy some clothes immediately. It's just bizarre. Anyway, so what brings you to the show, Amanda?
Well, first of all, going to sound crawling, but I love what you do.
Thank you.
You'd said about wanting people who can share their stories, can kind of just chat about life. And I kind of not enjoy sharing my story with people, but for me, my story, my background, having lived with a chronic health condition for 12 years now, I like opportunities to share that story with people.
Okay, cool. So, well, not cool, but was it fibromyalgia? Was that, I think, yeah?
It is, yeah, and 10 out of 10 for the pronunciation on that one.
I've spoken to a few people that struggle that, sadly. So can you kind of tell people what it is and how it affects you and kind of what you're doing to combat that?
Yeah, so fibromyalgia is a long-term chronic health condition. Current medical research suggests it is to do with the central nervous system. So, but the easiest way to explain it is it's like the pain receptors in your brain don't work properly. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like someone has taken the control knob of that, turned it all the way up, and then pulled the knob off.
Ouch. And you said that you've had this for about 12 years.
I was diagnosed in May 2009.
So did something kind of bring it on, or did it just appear like out of nowhere?
To be honest, looking back, because they do say there are some research studies that say about a trauma response, and I haven't been able to place anything, but I was very much I suppose what you say, a grade A personality. I was very much a people pleaser. I was very driven. I worked in care at the time, and I adored my working in the care home I worked in. So I was very much overdoing the hours, overtime at the drop of a hat, extra shifts, because I was so of service to the residents, to my colleagues. So I probably pushed a lot further than I should have. If when I started having pain issues and having issues, I had stopped, maybe then it wouldn't have developed as it did. But I know better now. I didn't, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Pushed on. And it took, I think, about 18 months of having like fatigue issues, pain issues, cognitive problems. Wonderful GP who was very open. I had friends that had the condition, and after a bit of back and forward, my GP went, "I think I know what you've got." I said, "Well, I think I do too." He referred me to a rheumatologist who poked and prodded a bit, and lo and behold, there was the diagnosis.
So how does it impact your life?
to start with, again, going back to the care home, I very stupidly worked on for 2 years after I was diagnosed. But as I said there's a lot of pain issues with it. There's fatigue issues with it. There's sleep disturbance with it. For me, one of the challenging things still, even though I'm fortunate enough to have, touch wood, have my condition reasonably well managed now, is the cognitive side of things. So if you catch me today where I'm maybe stumbling over my words, or I struggle for the right word to fill the space, that's why, very often I know what I want to say here, but somewhere between here and there, it disappears or comes out as something completely different.
Yeah, that must be a pain in the neck, yeah, I guess.
And there's a wide range of symptoms with it. I mean, no two people with fibromyalgia are the same, and I think this is where a lot of the misunderstanding, a lot of the lack of awareness comes from, and the lack of appreciation of the condition comes from, because no two people are the same. There are people who have great mobility issues, less cognitive issues. There are people who are more cognitive side, but possibly have bowel issues. There's a long list of symptoms, and not everybody has all the symptoms.
Mm-hmm. So you've had this for about 12 years now. What kind of process have you gone through from being diagnosed with it, having to kind of suffer with it, and now sort of managing it? What was the kind of process you've gone through to get to where you are today?
So spent a few years, as I say, my GP was absolutely fantastic from the off, which again, for people with a lot of chronic health conditions, is a rare thing. But for me, it was great. So it was medication and things. As I say, I had friends who had the condition, so I was connected with a support group. So I was able to go to my GP and say, listen, somebody at the support group's on this medication, can I try that? Somebody in the support group was referred to this particular physio, can you please refer me there? So to a certain extent, with my GP support, I was managing my condition from the off. But again, I know that's very rare. I'm quite fortunate in that. So it was about 4 or 5 years down the line of progressively stronger medications, progressively, and it got to the stage where I was on things like tramadol, gabapentin, and taking things like ibuprofen and paracetamol on top of all that, but still having, for me, not a functional and bearable level of pain. So I had the conversation, I had that light bulb moment of, if this is going to be me for either the rest of my life or the foreseeable future, there has to be another way to do this. There has to be something else. And again, through having been a member of the support group I was in, I was aware of a place in Glasgow called the Centre for Integrative Care. Now it's an NHS resource. I won't go on about how badly underfunded it is and unappreciated it is just now. That's for another day. But again, my GP referred me there, and they look at the problem holistically. It's not just people with fibromyalgia, it's all sorts of conditions they treat, but basically it's people who are looking for that integrated, holistic, all-encompassing approach to handling things. I went through programs there that involved using cognitive behavioral therapy. I also did some mindfulness-based CBT programs, and that was where the shift began for me and how things changed. Looking at, as I said, I was a chronic people pleaser. I was very much not good at boundaries and putting myself first. So realizing the impact that was having on my health, being able to use mindfulness and notice the impact things like stress would have on my condition, and just being aware of what I could do to make those things better. Worked with them to pick up these tools, different things, and to the extent where we're now 6 years down the road from my first appointment there, and I manage my fibromyalgia with no pharmaceutical input whatsoever.
Wow, because those two drugs that you mentioned a few minutes ago before the ibuprofen, are they sort of like really strong pain relief drugs?
Tramadol's an opiate.
Oh, right, okay, which is quite addictive, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. And there's been a lot of stuff, the NICE guidelines have come out in England, and they're veering away from opiate prescription for people with chronic and persistent pain. So, but for me, it was very much a choice I made because they weren't working for me. I would never force, and I would never say anyone should be forced down that path if medication works for them. You know, I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. You know, it's just, they didn't work for me.
Yeah, I get that's the problem with a lot of drugs, isn't it? They can work like a miracle for one person, and then the best friend takes exactly the same dosage, whatever, and it's just zero effect.
Absolutely. And it's because, again, we're all individuals, we all react to things differently. We all, you know, accept and not accept that our brains and our bodies work differently with things.
So you mentioned that you're now completely medication free.
Yes.
How the hell did you manage that, going from all that stuff, you know, a few years ago to having zero? I mean, what have you done specifically to go from all those drugs and pain management via, you know, ibuprofen, etc., to zero?
One of the biggest things, and I know when someone has a long-term condition, this can be one of the most challenging things. For me, the biggest key was acceptance. As I say, it was that initial point of, okay, if this is going to be me for the rest of my life, then I need to start living with this instead of fighting against it. You know, so the acceptance was a big thing. The mindset shift for me was a big thing, in accepting that there was almost always going to be a level of pain. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was about taking control back from that. You know, I've referred to it in places I've spoken about it before as making friends with the monster. You know, it was a case of negotiating like what's needed, you know, so like, okay, so realizing, as I say, things that brought me pain, okay, so let's not do that, you know, let's not push past that, let's set boundaries, let's, you know, let's indulge in self-care, you know, and as I say, accepting that there will be some level of pain every day, there will be some level of challenge every day, but putting tools in place and using things to live my best life with it, instead of popping pills that weren't working to try and magically take this pain away. Mm-hmm.
And did you have to leave your job eventually in the care?
Yes, my employers, and again, I was extremely lucky with this, my employers supported me. I worked on for 2 years after diagnosis, which, if anyone knows the care sector, you know, working in that sort of job, lifting and laying and supporting vulnerable elderly people with a chronic pain condition was not easy. And because it was all I had wanted to do, and at that time I thought it was all that would ever bring me purpose in a working life, I was reluctant to give it up. But eventually the light bulb moment of, again, there'd be no quality of life, there'd be no, you know, it was literally work, bed, you know, there was nothing in between. And again, that I can't be the carer I want to be for my residents, for my colleagues, and I have no quality of life outside it. There's no point to this anymore. So left that, spent a couple of years, about a year and a half, trying to find another job in the same sector. But unfortunately, once you have left one job because of health reasons, and because when you put down on your form you have a chronic health condition, companies aren't always as understanding. You know, and I can understand it as a challenge. It can be a challenge having people, you know, under your employee who have health conditions. So I get that, but didn't find anything, and then began going down self-employment route. Mm-hmm. Initially very different from where I find myself now. I was a crafter at the time of me giving up my work, and I had always said I would do something with that one day. So initially, through a fantastic disability employment advisor at the job centre, was supported to go self-employed with that. But the therapeutic side of things, you know, how much enjoyment I got from creativity and how much benefit it gave me, I started wanting to share that with other people. So that kind of brought in starting to look at therapeutic things, and then becoming aware of the fact that a lot of the services and things that had helped me weren't accessible to people. You know, they weren't, not everyone gets referred to the Centre for Integrative Care. Not everyone has access to that. So I became quite keen on wanting to share what had helped me with other people. So took myself more down the therapeutic route of getting the qualifications and the certificates to allow me to share what had helped me with other people.
Am I right in thinking that this Centre for Integrated Care is unique in the UK?
I think it is. I know in terms of that, I think it's the only one, it's definitely the only one in Scotland. I think there is a pain management service in Bath that I'm not fully clued up on, but I think it may adopt some of the similar policies. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, with the like offering holistic things, it is a pretty much, to my knowledge, it's a one of a kind place.
The reason I ask is I came across the name of this centre in a post in a group on Facebook, and they were kind of talking about how literally it belongs to the NHS, but it's just so badly underfunded. And let's not talk politics, but
no,
it's a shame because science is just now beginning to kind of accept that the mind and the body work together. They're not kind of two separate units, and that we need to start having to look at the body in a, I don't like the word holistic, it's a bit too, has some but look at the body as a whole. Yeah? And I know that in England there's been a few what do you call them, GP surgeries that have started some, what do they call them? I can't remember.
Social prescribing, isn't it?
That's it. That's exactly it. Where, like some people with depression or anxiety, they're given a prescription to go and work in a garden or to go and help on an allotment and stuff like this. And it's actually working because, medication works and is a very, very valuable tool, but it doesn't work all the time, like we've said. So it's such a shame when you hear about brilliant centres like the one that we're just talking about, not getting the support. But then again, the NHS is one of these institutions that it's a monster in size and it just consumes money, and it does brilliant things, but it's kind of like just too unwieldy at the moment. And things like this centre we're talking about, I guess it's not a deliberate thing, it just gets left onto the one side, isn't it? When we need more of them.
It's priorities, and they don't necessarily understand. I mean, even putting it to a basic financial level for them, think how much money the NHS has been saved, that I'm now 6 years not using any pharmaceutical.
Exactly.
So it's like, it's one of those ones, sometimes, in life they say you have to speculate to accumulate.
Well, the thing is,
so maybe it's that thing of, if they did fund these things a little bit more, they would reap the benefits and the profits in the long run.
See, I don't think it's even speculate to accumulate, because there's so much evidence coming up now that if we treat the body as a whole and do things like social prescribing and not necessarily looking at alternative therapies as such, but just looking at the body as a whole and treating it as a whole, rather than just kind of like, okay, this bit here hurts, so let's just treat this bit here.
Yeah.
Over time, we are going to save loads and loads of money and, reduce the amount of dependency on opiates and other things as well. Because the research is showing you, research is being done all over the world about how, the body is just this one unit and it needs to be treated as a unit rather than, like symptom cause. So hopefully over time, this centre and others like it will get the funding it needs, and there'll be more research and more work done and more centres opening to look at the body and treat the body as a whole.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I noticed the NICE guidelines in England are going down, kind of more suggesting like things like exercise and suggesting acupuncture and things like this. So there is kind of realization that, these things need to be kind of implemented, at least in some way.
Yeah, we need to do the research. We need to look at
Yeah.
all of the kind of therapies that are out there, all of the alternative solutions or
Hmm.
potential solutions, and go, that one works, that one doesn't work, that one works, that one doesn't work.
Yeah.
Get the ones that work, bring them in, and make
Hmm.
them part of the toolkit that is
Yeah.
available. Because, like you say, you've gone from being reliant on all this medication and over 6 years to becoming pain free with the help of this centre and your various support groups. So it
Well,
works
not
for you.
necessarily pain free, but
No, sorry, no, not
medication
pain
free.
free. My apologies, medication free. That's what I meant to say. From all this medication to medication free,
Yeah.
and through working with this centre and with your support group. So if it can work for you, then potentially it can work for lots and lots of
Hmm.
other people. But as you mentioned, if other people can't get access to those resources, then they're not even going to have the kind of opportunity to figure out if it does work for them.
Yeah. I think the other thing is with that, with the holistic model is we're actually we're we're raised against it to a certain extent. You know, from a young age, we almost learn and we're taught that if you're not well, you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you something to make it better.
Yeah,
You know, so I
absolutely.
think to a certain extent we kind of not give away our power, but you know, we give away the opportunity to do something about it ourselves. You know, we're looking for somebody, we're looking outwards for the solution. You know, we're looking for that. And again, with the NHS funding, GPs have an average of what, 10 minutes to see someone. So their desire to help someone is often caught up in that, well, I only have this amount of time. So if I write them a prescription, that's going to help quicker than, some of the other avenues that might be.
Yeah.
So it's maybe that model of things needs to change as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it's the model that needs to be reviewed. And the
Mm-hmm.
more we start to look at the body as a whole, I do think that over time that model will change. But you need more people that are prepared to put in 10, 12 years of training to become doctors,
Mm-hmm.
because doctors don't have the time because there aren't enough doctors, and it's kind of like a vicious cycle, isn't it? We need more people coming in that want to take on the challenge of pushing yourself through med school and becoming qualified to become a GP. But we
Mm-hmm.
also, as well, we need to take a certain amount of responsibility for our own health, and not just kind of go, okay, I'm overweight now, I need a pill to
Mm-hmm.
reduce my overweight, or I've got this, or I've got that, I've got the other. And social prescribing, I think, is a brilliant way forward. I think it's a really, really interesting model, and it's proving that it works. I mean, I read about a surgery, not a surgery, a GP surgery in London, southeast London, I think it was, where they started this. Their GP return visits are kind of dropping exponentially, and
Mm-hmm.
the dispensing of certain medications has dropped down as well, simply by getting people to be part of the community and to get out doing exercise, to
Mm-hmm.
get out walking, to get out doing gardening, all those kind of things that you would think are common sense, but aren't really.
Yeah, I know. Again, so see, you would think it's common sense, but sometimes common sense doesn't, it's not the easiest.
So coming back to your kind of self-employment route, you said that you were a crafter and you became self-employed as a crafter. What led you to change from being self-employed, helping people with crafting, to doing what you do now?
As I say, it was for me, I had always found crafting to be quite therapeutic. I found it relaxing. It was a good distraction technique, when I needed it. It was something I could do that even, if I was having a really rough day, there was still something I could be doing, something I could be making,
Hmm.
So there was just those realizations kind of led me down more. And initially I thought about retraining in art therapy, becoming an art therapist. So I did some of the courses. I did a foundation level one because I hadn't really done, I wasn't going to be like university level right away. So I did a foundation course, and then I was going to go to a night class at Glasgow Uni. And there was just something went, it didn't feel right. Just that something not for me. Whether it was a thing about thinking about how it would impact health wise, I thought, no, it's fine. And then someone in a group I was in mentioned this pain management diploma that they had done with an online learning organisation. Now, even though it's an online learning platform, the certificate was accredited through the Complementary Medical Association. So it had a bit of a, it had a bit of a foundation to it. So I went, oh, looked at the prospectus and realised that so much of it was stuff, it was the mindset stuff, it was the mindfulness stuff, it was the acceptance work that had helped me. And I went, oh, I need to be doing that. I've had a few, as you heard me saying about light bulb moments before. So it was one of these light bulb moments of, I need to be doing this. Because it's okay having the experience of this work for me to share with people, but you also need to have, I feel you need to have the qualifications as well. It makes it more, the balance is better. If, as well as having the life experience, you have the qualifications to share this with people. It's not just peer support. It gives it another level of, not authority, but authenticity if you've got the right bits of paper as well. I don't know if authenticity is the right word, but hopefully you know where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, I understand.
So did the pain management diploma, which I say it's very kind of, I say holistic pain management, but it's not, because it's more mindset based. So did that, and then because I had studied that, enjoyed it, did quite well, and in the level I passed that, it was a case of, okay, so what else that works for me can I go and study? So mindfulness practitioner course, I have done some more therapeutic art coaching courses, and I've just kind of worked my way through all the things that helped me. I've worked my way through getting the qualifications for them. And it goes at both ends of the scale, because I'm currently studying, well, I've taken some time off from doing an NLP practitioner course, just because I found it was getting a bit heavy. So I've taken a break from that, and I'm doing an essential oils course. So the stuff I study is really at both ends of the scale. There's all the very sciencey, evidence-backed stuff through to the lighter, more holistic, more alternative stuff. But again, it's all stuff that has worked for me. So I have a basis in it that I'm saying to people, look, this worked for me, it might work for you too.
So putting all of this kind of together, what do you call yourself? Are you a coach? Are you a healer? And how does it work? How, if a client contacts you and goes, Amanda, I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z, what's kind of the process?
So the catch-all title I came up with, rather than having, 3 or 4 different things, was wellbeing and creativity coach, because that covered everything. And it really does. It covers everything, as I've said, from the proper stuff, the pain management, the mindfulness and meditation, solid evidence-based stuff, through to sound therapy, crystal therapy, aromatherapy, and essential oil stuff that I'm doing just now. So it's a wide range of stuff. People have Facebook. I do a lot of kind of live stuff on Facebook, put things out a lot on there. But really it's just about letting people know through various organisations that I've supported and done work with that I'm here. And, it's kind of like that thing of sharing my journey, as you're kindly letting me do now, and saying to people, this is what, this is how I did things. This was my journey. I might not be on the same journey as you, but I've been on a similar path. And maybe I can give you a few shortcuts to make the journey a little bit easier.
So do you take your clients through like a process as such, or do you kind of like have a discussion with them and then suggest, based on what they tell you, a route to go down?
I keep it, again, as I've said, we're all individuals. What works for one might not work for another. So my clients come in, they can either, my sessions are all listed, so they can book in for something specific. If someone's coming for the first time, I usually say, come in, have a cuppa, let's have a chat. Well, I can say that now because I can see clients again, today's my first day back seeing clients in person in 4 months. But you know, so I can do the whole make appointment, come in, have a cuppa, let's have a chat, tell me what, you know, I'm not going to tell them this is what you need. Tell me what you want, what's your goal out of, you know, what in your well-being do you want to improve? You know, where do you want to make the changes? And then say, right, okay, so you want to sleep better, right? Well, let's look at some meditation stuff and let's look at some sleep hygiene stuff and put that in, you know, and you can work on that, right? Okay, so you just want a little period of time where you can relax and feel nice. Okay, so maybe some crystal therapy stuff with a nice healing session in my premises would be a good thing for you to bring into, you know, your self-care, you know. But it's very much about giving people, yes, I'm a therapist, and yes, you know, I provide sessions, but I've always said if someone comes to me for one session or sees one free thing that I put out on Facebook and that's what clicks for them, my job's done. You know, because it's not like we said about, you know, opiates and pharmaceutical stuff, it builds up a dependence. I want my clients to depend on them, not me.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean,
you know, it's about me giving them their own answers and me helping them build their toolbox, not replacing a reliance on medication with a reliance on me.
Yeah, I get that. It's really important that we don't make clients dependent on us. We help them and kind of help them on their way and give them some tools to take with them, but we don't want them replacing the opiate for us, do we?
Yeah, I mean, I keep saying it, I've said it, replacing. The thing is, I don't even, if someone is on medication and it's working for them, then I would say to them, don't, you know, if it's working, I would also look at if it's working for them, why do they want to change that? You know, what's going on that they want to change that? They need to be talking to their doctor about that, you know, because I'm not qualified to do those things, you know. So I would never, it's not a condition of working with me that they have to be going down a non-opiate path or a non-pharmaceutical path. That's not, you know, I fully believe that there's a place for both.
Yeah, I guess if you think of the word holistic, that has to mean medication of any shape or form, doesn't it?
I mean, holistic is that whole person approach. It's that individual, and it's individual. It's each person, you know, somebody's on, because there's certain things, you know, like depression, for example. Yes, there is a place for social prescribing. There is a place for meditation and mindfulness, but depression ultimately is a chemical imbalance in the brain. And sometimes you need pharmaceutical help to top up that imbalance. You know, we've said with fibromyalgia, it's a pain response. You know, some of them, I mean, I mentioned gabapentin. It's an epilepsy medication, but it's also a nerve medication. So, you know, if someone needs that medication that silences that central nervous system for a little bit, and it does the job for them, that's fine. You know, it's not, for me, it's a marriage of both, if appropriate, and if it's not, then about letting people know that there are other ways.
Yeah, it's about the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
So where is the best place for people to reach out to you, Amanda, if they want to know about more of this?
Best place is probably my Facebook page. So if they're on Facebook and they look up the Butterfly Room Paisley, that takes them to my virtual space. And I post on there regularly every day, even if it's just letting people know what appointments I have available, what's happening. For example, today's Tuesday, tomorrow's Wednesday. So I do a weekly Facebook Live, and, you know, offering, so it's like sometimes it's meditation stuff, sometimes it's more woo-woo and angel focused, because I'm a bit into that as well. But, you know, so I do my best to put free content out, free links, because again, for me, as I said, I'm aware that a lot of the stuff that helped me wasn't accessible for people, but also it wasn't affordable. You know, for me, it's about making this stuff accessible and affordable. So the Facebook page does that. And basically, if you Google the Butterfly Room Paisley. You'll probably find me on all the socials, because I'm even playing about with TikTok at the moment.
So listen, you don't need to remember all those links. I'll put them in the show notes. As a kind of final thing, Amanda, what would you say to anyone who's maybe been newly diagnosed with fibromyalgia, or thinks they may have it, or has been struggling with it for a while and doesn't know what to do next? What would you say?
I would say the internet is a great place for newly diagnosed, because it lets you access support, but be mindful that a lot of people's personal experiences are exactly that. Their personal attitudes, their personal experiences of what are capable and what can happen are based on, and I'm aware I'm saying that as well, my personal story is my personal story. I make no guarantees. But just educate yourself in terms of, in the UK, and I'm not sure, I hope I'm allowed to do this. Am I allowed to signpost to a charity that I would recommend? Is that okay?
Go for it. Yeah, sure.
I would always say newly diagnosed people in the UK, contact FMA UK. Their information pack is brilliant. And they'll send, you can have that sent out. So information, support, and just the easiest thing is to say acceptance doesn't mean giving in. Accepting that you have a condition, or accepting that this is part of your life, you're not surrendering to it. You're learning to work with it, and it can be done.
Yeah,
there is hope.
Acceptance is a huge thing, not just with people struggling with chronic pain, but in all parts of life. Yeah. Acceptance is massive.
There's a fantastic quote. It's Michael J. Fox, and I'm probably paraphrasing it a bit, but it's along the lines of acceptance is not surrender. It is simply admitting that it is what it is, and there is a way through it.
I must
it's
look
something
for that
along
quote.
Those lines.
I'll look for it and I'll post it in the show notes as well. Michael J. Fox. Listen, Amanda, it's been absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's been a tough journey for you, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. Listen, thanks for your time.
No, thank you.
Any last words?
Chat.
Any last words?
No, I think I have probably said more than enough. I feel as if I've monopolised the conversation.
Well, that's the whole point. That's why you're here. You know, it's for me to do as little talking as possible. So on that note, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And that's the end of this episode of the Happy Head podcast. And I'll see you very soon. Bye now.